Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show, where you'll find health and fitness inspiration, motivation, and information shared in 15-minute episodes. Tune in while getting a move on to make leading and enjoying the benefits of a healthy lifestyle almost too easy. It's the Fit 15. And now your host, Catherine Basu.
Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show. I'm your host, Catherine Basu, and today on the podcast, we're going to continue the marathon madness. I've had a few episodes focusing on the Boston Marathon, but today we're going to start heading over to London, both on the podcast and for me, I'm actually going to be flying to London shortly to cheer on not only today's guest, who I'll talk to you about in a moment, but also a longtime client, Meredith Rice, who is running it as her first marathon. So if you are going to be in London watching the marathon, put in Meredith Rice. She's also still raising some funds for her charity, Get Kids Going. So if you go and look her up in the app and you feel called to do a little donation, I know she would appreciate a donation of any amount as she gets ready to complete that goal, but also this big goal that she's been working towards to complete her first marathon race. All right, so getting ready for the London Marathon. I told you I'm going to cheer on a client, and also today's guest. Today's guest is going to be working on completing the marathon as part of his World Marathon Majors 6-star series accomplishment. Oh my goodness, it does not sound like the right way to say that. He's going to try to be getting his 6th star by completing that marathon on Sunday. So that is the 6th race that he needed to complete all 6 World Marathon Majors. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest to you. I will mention one more thing before I get into that and into his full bio, and that is that I got very chatty with Dave, and as you probably would guess, because he is a runner, and we actually split up our conversation into 2 parts. So today we'll talk about Dave's marathon journey and getting ready to run that race on Sunday, and then in tomorrow's episode we'll talk about Dave's fundraising journey and raising funds for marathons, because that's been a big part of his motivation to continue what he's doing. All right, so who is my guest? I mentioned Dave already by first name, but it's Dave Bloomquist. Dave started running 10 years ago at age 50. He progressed up the ranks from 5Ks to 10Ks and eventually marathons, all in about 2 years. Since he started running, he's run 30 marathons, over 50 half marathons, and countless other races. He is also a triathlete, having completed 3 70.3 Ironman races. Dave is an RRCA certified running coach and a crew chief with the Atlanta Track Club. He is working on completing the 50 States Endurance Challenge, and this Sunday should earn his Abbott World Marathon Majors 6-star medal in London. He lives in Woodstock, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, and runs with various groups, including the Atlanta Track Club, Roswell Riverside Runners, and Rogue Kennesaw Runners. He is most proud of the nearly $25,000 he has raised for various causes through his racing. Well, welcome to the podcast, Dave. I'm so excited to have you as my guest today.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be on your program.
So you are about to complete your 6th Abbott World Marathon Majors this coming weekend. So people listening might think you've maybe always been a runner, but how did you actually start running? And can you share that story with us?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So if you go back in time 10 years ago, I was your traditional couch potato. I weighed 235, overweight, pre-diabetic, high blood pressure, and my doctor basically told me, either get my act together or die. Of course, I still continued to ignore him. And then I'm kind of stubborn now, right? But what I am is competitive, and my daughter dared me to run the Peachtree Road Race here in Atlanta. Peachtree, as you may know, is the largest 10K in the U.S. with over 60,000 runners. Mm-hmm. So within Atlanta, it's kind of a big deal. And I'm like, well, this is kind of crazy, but sure, I'll try it. And didn't have a clue what I was getting myself into, and really didn't train or anything. And so when it finally happened and the gun went off, I ran a mile and then walked the rest.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter left me in the dust, took no pity on me whatsoever. And
she's competitive too, I guess, right? Maybe that's
oh yeah. The two of us very competitive. She didn't lose any sleep about leaving her old man behind. So I don't know, probably 30, 40 minutes later, I caught up with her and pretty much decided I wasn't going to let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So as we went through the year and started anticipating running Peachtree the following year, I said, I need to get in running shape. And so enrolled in the Atlanta Track Club's program. They call it In Training for Peachtree.
Mm-hmm.
And actually did it with my daughter. The two of us enrolled. And that following spring trained with the Atlanta Track Club and went through their program. And that second Peachtree, we raced to the finish, the two of us, pretty much side by side. And as I like to point out, anytime I have a public audience, I beat her by all of about 3 seconds.
Oh, jeez.
I take it when I can get it because she's pretty fast.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. So had she been a runner for a while, or just she liked doing the Peachtree 10K just because it's such a big community event, or?
Yeah, she actually hadn't been much of a runner. She had just graduated college from the University of Georgia at the time and had run a couple 5Ks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure, that might have even been her first 10K, but needless to say, she didn't have any problems finishing.
Mm-hmm,
Youth always has that on their side. But no, we pretty much really became runners together as we completed that race. We continued to train together for the most part, ran our first half marathons and then ultimately our first full marathon, the old Atlanta marathon that they used to hold in the fall. We ran that together. And once again, well, in this case, she beat me, but...
Hi, friends, it's Catherine, and if you are tuning in and only have 15 minutes for an out and back walk, that was your halfway point reminder. You'll want to turn around now. All right, back to Dave.
I've got pretty much used to that. But we trained together, and still, although she's since been married and the like, has other commitments, we still run a fair amount together and try to find races we can do together, just to kind of keep that bond going. Yeah,
no, that's awesome. I got into running, wanting to run. My dad was a runner and would leave, stop playing with me to go run when I was a kid, and I wasn't old enough yet, so it always seemed really cool. So it's cool how I can definitely relate to that experience of enjoying that bond with a family member. It's really special. So that's cool that and I think it's cool though that she was able to inspire you, her dad, right, to get into it. Often it's the other way around, right? So
yeah, it's really worked out well. I mean, I was kind of concerned when she graduated that she'd have her own life, and maybe we wouldn't see much of her, but it really has been something that the two of us have enjoyed doing together, and for a number of years now, really kept us close and kind of in the same orbit that otherwise we might not have had that common bond to continue to bring us together. So it's worked out really well.
Oh, that's super cool. So how far out from your first race, which was a 10K, a lot of people do a 5K as their first race, but how far out from that was your first marathon then?
Well, we pretty quickly transitioned to half marathons, and then that was probably within 6 months, and then I think within a year of that to our first full marathon, the Atlanta marathon, and then decided that this is something that I didn't think this initially when we finished that first race. It was like, right? Never again. It's funny how time heals all wounds, including sore muscles and calves and all that. But then we decided we'd go on the road, and we went and ran the Pittsburgh Marathon together, which
Oh,
is
nice.
still today one of my favorite races. And we just kept going.
Very cool. Yeah. So it's been, you said, less than 10 years, and you're about to run your 31st marathon. So that's pretty impressive. I've been running for longer than that, and I've only done 5 marathons. So
Well, I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, but I enjoy the challenge. There's such a difference, as you probably well know, between running a half and full marathon.
sure.
Particularly when you're hitting the wall at mile 19 or 20, and and it can be a tough slog. I've had great marathons, and I've had ones that I'd rather forget. But regardless, when you've finished one, it is quite an accomplishment, and it's that challenge and then that accomplishment that kind of keeps me coming back year after year. Racing those longer distances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. Now, how has that breakdown gone? Because I'm trying, I'm doing my math here. So maybe do about how many marathons a year are you doing?
Well, I really started ramping up about 4 years ago, 5 years ago maybe, and I was doing 4 or 5 a year.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm getting a little older, my body's protesting a little bit more that amount of pounding on my legs. But this year, I did Tokyo, the 5th of my 6 world majors, just 2 months ago. I'll do London, of course, this weekend, and then I've already signed up for Marine Corps in the fall, which I've previously run, but it's one of my favorite races. And my daughter's going to do it, so I'm going to join her and we'll do Marine Corps in the fall.
Yeah. Very cool. So, I'm impressed because I'm younger than you, but for me, two a year is what my body can usually handle. So I'm impressed. Yeah.
Well,
but
everybody's different for sure, and I wouldn't necessarily prescribe that for everybody. And and I'm not trying to PR every one of them.
Sure.
Kind of selective in which ones I want to compete competitively. And when I say competitively, I mean against myself, because I'm not going out there and winning age groups running marathons. Right? But certain ones I look at. In London will be one of them where I'll go, give it my best effort, see what I can do. But that's not always the case. Other times it's just really just to go and to enjoy the venue and the city, and just take in what it has to offer and finish. Goal number 1, always to finish.
Right. Which is, for the marathon, it's never guaranteed, right? Unfortunately, but that's
not hardly. I'm fortunate I've finished all 30 marathons I've attempted.
Oh,
but
wow.
there have been some where I've come close to. Matter of fact, the first time I did Marine Corps, it wasn't going all that well. It was warmer than average, warmer than normal. So, and I'm not a great runner in heat.
Yeah.
And Marine Corps goes towards the end, I'm guessing about mile 20, it goes over a long bridge. And it's kind of a big heat sink. And I wasn't having a whole lot of fun. And you come across the water into, I think it's Crystal City, and you run around there and then head back north towards the finish. And my wife was on the side of the road. It was probably about mile 24, I'm guessing. And I'm just over it. I'm like, this is no fun. I'm just going to phone this one in. And I asked my wife, and she says, Dave, you're doing great. You're on track to PR. And I'm like, no, you got to be kidding.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, no, I got to keep running. I got to keep pushing, But, you just never know. That was one I was just ready to kind of give up on, and it turns out that at least at that point in time, it was my PR.
And did you end up PRing or just finishing with that, with a little extra motivation for that one?
Yeah, no, I sucked it up, and that was, I think, it was probably my 5th or 6th marathon, but it was my PR at that time. So, it's funny how so much of this is mental. I think a marathon, maybe more than any other distance, it's mental.
Oh, for sure.
My daughter and I were running, I guess it's about 3 years ago now, the St. Jude's Memphis Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, neither one of us had broken 4 hours. And that was our goal.
Yeah.
And I had to stop to make a pit stop at a porta potty, and that kind of set us back a little bit. And so we get to mile 25, and my daughter and I were both kind of dragging. And she looks at her watch and says to me, "Dad, it's just not going to happen today." And then we looked at each other with that kind of screw you look. And we ran in the last 1.2 miles, I think, at an 8:25 pace.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And came in at 4 hours and 6 seconds.
Oh, wow.
But, it just goes to show that it's so mental, because I thought we were just done. And yet, when you find that kind of extra gear, it's amazing what you can do, even when the body's telling you it's kind of spent.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know. Have you ever read Dina Castor's book, her memoir, Let Your Mind Run?
I've heard about it. I've heard people reference it.
Definitely gotta check that out, because it's funny. I went to the Boston Marathon. I wasn't able to run. I had an injury that kept me out of running, unfortunately, but I was able to spend a lot of time checking out the seminar series that they have there over the weekend. And I don't know if it's because I just, more recently read her book, but really everyone was talking about just the mental piece of running, which is, I definitely didn't tap into that when I was running in high school and all that. But since I've started marathoning and after reading her book, especially, it's been a huge help. So definitely recommend that, a book club recommendation for you and your daughter.
There you go. I'll have to look it up.
Well, awesome. So, okay, you've run, I'm just inspired by the fact that you've run so many marathons. So do you have you said you liked the Pittsburgh Marathon. Any others that you would recommend listeners maybe check out?
I've really enjoyed, with just a few exceptions, all of them, that I've done. I had the opportunity 2 years ago to run the Paris Marathon. And I can't think anything more iconic than starting at the Arc de Triomphe and running around Paris. And I mean, everything you've ever seen on TV or seen in a textbook about Paris and the history and the Louvre and all that. And then you double back, you're on your way, you're running along the Seine, and the Eiffel Tower is on your left. And then you run around a park, cross the river, and finish back by the Arc de Triomphe. And that venue is just amazing. I don't think anything for overall kind of, I don't want to say from a touristy perspective, but just, all the history that was associated with it was really cool.
Yeah, well, I've been to Paris twice, and I love the city. So now you have me thinking that maybe I need to add the Paris Marathon to my list.
Oh, absolutely. If you like Paris, I can't think of a better race to run.
And what time of year is the Paris Marathon held?
Shoot. I don't know.
They're all a blur, right?
I don't know if it's the fact that I've run 30 or the fact that I'm just getting old, but yeah, they're all a blur.
Okay, we'll have to look that one up. But no, that's super cool.
It is, yeah. It's kind of mind blowing to be on the Champs-Élysées running a marathon.
Yeah.
Really, this is why we do this.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I've run a lot of others. I've mentioned Marine Corps is great. Marines put it on. They run with you. Have you done that?
I have not. No.
So they put it on, and they're running the course, and then you get towards the end, and there's a slight uphill towards the Iwo Jima Memorial, and the Marines are kind of lining the hill, and they're yelling at you like they're drill sergeants. Get your ass up that hill.
That's funny. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's real motivation there, but that's cool. And all the monuments in DC and the Marine Corps band playing, and that's great. I think the one that and for obvious reasons, really stick out in my mind, probably more than anything else, is the Boston Marathon. I
Sure.
ran that 3 years ago, and it was like an out-of-body experience to start in Hopkins and run that race down to Boston. It's just, the crowds are amazing, and it's just an amazing experience. It's kind of hard to put in words, but I think most runners can kind of appreciate it, the heritage and history, and just being part of that is a real privilege, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've spectated it twice. I grew up in Connecticut, so about maybe 10 years ago now, my cousin and I who was a runner, went and watched it. And that's what inspired me to actually want to run a marathon, because I'd been a runner and I thought, maybe one day I'll train for it, and that would be cool to put out, cross off the bucket list. But being there and actually experience it that time is what got me to actually start training. And then this last time I went, it was kind of bittersweet because I had wanted to run. I had an injury, as I mentioned, but my dad came up and watched it, and my mommy and my dad. But my dad is how I got into running, and he has been kind of in running retirement, but he's considering coming out of retirement now to run Boston. So just kind of speaks to the power of and the magic of the Boston Marathon, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing. I ran Boston. It was one of my first charity runs, and I ran it representing the Atlanta Track Club, their Kilometer Kids program, and which encourages and sponsors youth running throughout the Atlanta area. So something that I didn't do, but highly value and really wanted to support and give back, and raised almost $10,000 for
Oh, wow.
the Atlanta Track Club. But what I knew I had going on was that there was a lot of people, hundreds of people that were tracking me.
Wow.
And there's a certain motivation. It goes back to the mental part.
Yeah.
A certain motivation, particularly when you get to those hills, Heartbreak Hill and the like. And it's like, I know my friends are out there while looking at my pace, wondering if I'm going to make them up these hills or not. And so that gave me an extra bit of encouragement that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And that ended up, and still is, my PR running Boston. And I finally broke 4 hours. So, of course, that race really, sticks out in my mind. It's one of my favorites. Whether, and the thing about Boston that you may or may not be familiar with is, when I ran it as a charity runner, because I had been trying to qualify, and I get close, but not close enough.
Sure.
And so I'm like, okay, I'll do this as a charity runner, and I'll run Boston. But I'm thinking, but I haven't qualified. Do I really belong there? And a little bit of doubt going on, and I couldn't believe it until I saw it for myself. I mean, the charity component of Boston is a thing. It's a big thing. There's like 4,000 or 5,000 runners running for charity.
Yeah.
And it's part of the culture and the history of that, all the money that's raised. And it's like, I do belong here. This is where I ought to be. And that was really kind of started, because many of these races that I've run subsequently, and they're so difficult to get into the lottery, I've done as a charity runner. And that's turned out to be very fulfilling to raise money for these very worthy causes while still accomplishing my running goals.
Hi friends, it's Catherine, and I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and are feeling super inspired by Dave. I know that even though I've been a runner for more than half my life, I'm very inspired by Dave. He's done more in terms of different endurance events in just 10 years than I have in my whole running career. So I'm inspired. I hope you'll share the episode to inspire someone else, no matter what stage they are in their running journey. I'd also encourage you to go to today's show notes to learn more about the charity that Dave is running for and possibly do a donation to support him in that goal as he goes to complete his 6th World Marathon Major this coming Sunday. And finally, wanted to remind you that this is part 1 of a conversation I'm having with Dave. So make sure to tune in tomorrow, subscribe so you don't forget to tune in, and you can learn more about why Dave's charity is so important to him and more about his fundraising journey as a runner. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will chat with you tomorrow if you subscribe. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Fit 15. For show notes and more, visit fitarmadillo.com/podcast. See you next time.